we've had some fun.
It's time for the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast. Here with a load of laughs, info, and fun, it's Tony B, Dave B, and Timmy D.
Before I go alone. Don't ask me this and one more song. It ain't too costly, no, I ain't too cheap, so just relax. I'm on my knees.
Welcome to the Ship's Gonna Happen, episode number 105. My name is Tony B. Alongside me, as usual, is David B. And Timmy D's out today. I think he's at a graduation, David.
That sounds right. Yeah, if it's that time of year.
It is that time of the year. Today, we have a very special guest that we're excited about. Professor Lenz from Duke University. Dr. Lenz is an experienced executive lecturer scholar in the field of banking and capital markets. He's also an expert in cybersecurity teaching, machine learning, blockchain, financial innovation, financial products and services. We are going to get into how that all can apply to transportation and trucking. The views of Ship's Gonna Happen are purely news-driven and do not express the views of any transportation provider or any business entity that uses a transportation provider. David, why do we do it?
Transportainment
And edutainment is what we call it. So we're really happy to have Professor on. David B., how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, producer Tony. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. It is dry out. And by dry, I mean as bone dry. I don't know if you're seeing that. I saw that you were watering your yard this morning, and it needs it, or at least I feel like it needs it. It's been a dry start to like late May and into early June. So we definitely need a little bit of rain.
Yeah, we'll talk to Jimmie and ask him down there in his part of the country how dry it is, if it's dry there, if he's seeing any of that weather.
So this show, along with all of our other shows, are brought to you by The Great Divide, 743 East New York Street, downtown Indianapolis. Great place to go after Ship's Gonna Happen week. Great place to go and unwind. Get a great meal, chat it up with the locals, hear some great music, and Jen and her staff are outstanding people. We greatly appreciate them being a sponsor of our podcast. It's a great place to go. And producer Tony, how has your week been? How are you feeling? And how's everything going with you?
Man, I've had a great week, doing really good. I was excited when you told us who we were going to be with today, and I'm looking forward to that. Jimmie, are you on, sir?
I am on, and thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Lenz. How are you?
I'm great. It's just Jimmie.
All right.
Really.
Awesome. All right. Good. Glad we can have that casual thing going on. So, Jimmie, how have you been? I'm assuming that school's kind of ending up for the year, and how have you been, and what's been new with you?
I'm great. School is out. I had a couple of classes graduate. I run two of the graduate programs here in the engineering school at Duke, the Master of Engineering in Financial Technology, FinTech, and the Master of Engineering in Cybersecurity. Had some awesome students graduating. All my students are awesome, but had a lot graduating this year, which is really, really nice to see. It's kind of a mixed blessing, you know. You love to see them graduate, but you hate to see them leave.
Right.
And kind of like your own kids, right? Kind of when they leave the house, it's kind of the same thing.
Right.
But I have all these kids now, so it's a lot of fun. But things are great down here in Durham, North Carolina. They really are. It's a cool area to be in. You know, we have just a different kind of environment here because we have Duke just up the road from us in Chapel Hill is University of North Carolina, of course. And then just south of us is North Carolina State University, giant engineering school and quant school. And so it's a lot of fun to be in an area with three major universities, a lot of students running around, a lot of activity in this neck of the woods.
That's awesome. So before we begin here, you know, David and I, we bring up many topics with kind of that we're going to lead into with you, sir. But can you just briefly describe to us what the blockchain is?
Sure. So in its simplest form, blockchain is a automated ledger that is viewable by everybody. So blockchain is a system of putting everything into the public environment And by putting it in the public environment and having everybody verify something, that's how you know something is true. Basically, it's a consensus mechanism, just like voting is. And when somebody puts something on the blockchain, you know it's valid because the majority of people on that particular blockchain have said this is a valid transaction. So it's not controlled by one single entity. There's no way for somebody to go on there and change something. That's what blockchain is at the end of the day. It's just a giant ledger of transactions that's viewable by the world.
Could you tell us briefly where we are and at the technology side of the blockchain now, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think you hear a lot of people say we're at 1.0. I think we're at probably 0.5.
Wow.
It's such a nascent technology. It's hard to imagine, but this is only, just a little over a decade old. And we're just starting to figure out, where it's valuable and where it's not. And we certainly are seeing a lot of things, a lot of different kinds of companies exploring blockchain and its advantages. A lot of them are private blockchain. So a lot of banks and financial companies are using blockchain now because it's more efficient. It is basically streamlines a lot of things, and it's very, very, very secure. Despite everything you hear about blockchains getting hacked and things like that, that doesn't really happen in the way that it does in a normal environment. They're very secure, and so a lot of companies are exploring different things. But we are seeing some and people always ask me, well, yeah, but what are the practical use cases? And we are seeing some really cool practical use cases. Most of them, though, are not terribly new or novel things. They're just massive improvements on things that we've seen or that have been around for a long time. Some of your listeners are probably familiar with a company called SoFi. If you graduated from college recently, you've definitely see advertisements from SoFi. Well, the guy who founded SoFi, Mike Cagney, founded a company called Provenance just a few years ago. And what they do is they're securitizing mortgages. And all mortgages, as everybody knows who's ever bought a house, your mortgage changes hands almost immediately. It's sold. And then it's sold into the capital markets. They put them on bonds and sell them out into the capital markets. Well, Mike is doing that using blockchain technology, and he's taken a lot of cost out of it. So he's automated things. It's the same buyers, it's the same sellers. But by automating it using blockchain, he's taken a ton of cost out of it. And so that benefits basically everybody. It benefits the buyers, it benefits the sellers. And that's what we're seeing with blockchain is, it's doing things. A lot of times it's the same old stuff, but it's in a much more efficient manner. And so it basically benefits everybody. Kind of like, you remember about 10 years ago when Rocket Mortgage came on the scene,
Right. Yep.
and all of a sudden mortgages went down in cost. It became much more efficient. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I remember when I bought my first house, 3 months was the average time to close a mortgage. And you had to bring tons of paperwork into a bank office, and you always forgot 5 things. And it was terrible. Now, now you can do it in a couple of weeks on Rocket. And it's a lower cost. And so that's been that's what I see from blockchain, those kinds of advancements.
How can transportation, trucking use the blockchain to its advantage?
I love that question because I'm a huge transportation fan. I do some economic research into the economies and things like that, and model a lot of stuff. And at the base of all of it is transportation, right? I mean, in particular here in the United States, there is no economy without transportation. And one of the things that a lot of your listeners are going to be really familiar with is factoring. For transportation company to get paid, most most people pay on 60 to 120 day terms. Right. And so to get paid, especially small businesses, because let's face it, the 90% of the transportation industry is companies that are 6 trucks or less. And people like that can't, you can't wait no business can wait 60 to 120 days to get paid. And so they end up going to factoring companies and taking a hit. Well, there's a company called Truck Coin Swap, and hey, for all transparency, I'm a partner there. And the guys who founded Truck Coin Swap, Todd Ziegler, who's the CEO, has been in transportation for more than a decade. So he kind of knows what he's doing in the sector. And so what we've come up with is a way to use blockchain. And most people don't even know that they're using blockchain to do this, but basically to cut out a lot of the factoring companies and for transportation companies to get paid 100 cents on the dollar right away, basically in 3 days.
Wow.
Instead of, because I mean, let's face it, a lot of people from the outside say, well, yeah, but it's only 3 or 4% of the gross that people are paying. But as we all know, transportation companies operate on a pretty thin margin, and 3 to 4% of the gross means about 25 to 30% of your net revenues.
Exactly.
So that's a lot of money that you're leaving on the table. And so using blockchain, we basically come up with a way that people can get 100 cents on the dollar. And and people say, well, are there big transaction fees or anything like that? And it's like, no, there aren't. We did I know we settled an invoice and we did it for exactly $1,000 not too long ago. And I think the total fees on that were $1.01.
Wow.
Yeah. So I can see, in the near future, blockchain being used for other things in the transportation industry. I think there are a couple of areas, and we all know this, that could improve from some efficiencies.
Sure.
And it would be great if we could see a little bit more of that. I know, there are often, and I hear this from drivers all the time. And by the way, I love, so we met at Mid-America Truck Show. We should mention that because that was a fun event. And I got a chance to talk to a lot of folks there. And one of the things I heard about from truck drivers is, the amount of surprises that come in. People think, oh, you just get in a truck and you deliver stuff and you get paid. And it's like, no, it doesn't
You're
work
talking
like
about surprise costs and stuff, right?
Surprise costs. Yeah. And I'll call it out. Lumpers are a surprise cost to a lot of guys.
Yes.
Right. They just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
If you could have a little more transparency, some of those costs people could account for. People would know up front. And I think that's just the start of things. But I see blockchain being a huge advantage especially for smaller businesses in the transportation sector. And let's face it, small businesses have always been the heart of America. You see a ton of innovation come out of small businesses. I was on Capitol Hill 2 weeks ago, talking about innovation in the United States and incentivizing more innovation in the United States. And, I think people were pretty open to hearing it. We actually sponsored a conference up at Duke in DC, as I said, a couple of weeks ago. And they're slowly but surely, people are realizing that we need to innovate in America. We need to get back to our roots.
Right.
And this is one way to do it is through small businesses. So Truck Coin Swap, TCS, is a small business itself. We are settling invoices right now for folks primarily in the Midwest. I don't know how that happened. We all started dealing with people in the Midwest, but that's where we started. But we obviously can work with people any place, but we are doing that, and people are realizing some huge savings. So it's kind of fun to see that happen.
So Jimmie, like you mentioned, I had the fortunate experience of meeting you at the Mid-America Truck Show. Remind me or refresh my memory. Were you there specifically to speak on at that?
I was there for. We were doing an educational event with Truck Coin Swap, and just teaching people a little bit more about blockchain and how blockchain helps out with everything in the in this particular part of the industry. And so we did an educational seminar there, which was a lot of fun. Had some great questions, some great people that participated in it. We had a lot of questions, which was really nice. Folks from across the country participated in it, but it was a lot of fun, and I took advantage of it. I was there for all 2.5 days, walking around, seeing people, talking to everybody. It was an education for me too. One of the things I came back to, people normally look at professors and things like that and are wondering, do you ever get to see, the kind of guy on the street? And it's like, yes, I'm out there all the time. I come from South Carolina. I'm rural South Carolina, so I'm very familiar with some of the small companies and things like that. And I love getting back and doing that. It really is. It's a lot of fun. Going and talking to people at those kinds of shows. I really have a good time. My wife came with me and she had a great time. So I've been telling friends, it's like, if this is not on your bucket list, Mid-America Truck Show should be on your bucket list. That and the Houston Rodeo. Both of those things you should have on your bucket list.
It was very nice to meet not only you, but it was also nice to have your wife. And I didn't know you from Adam and just sat down next to you. We struck up a great conversation. That was at the end of March, right there at the beginning of April. And since that day, Jimmie, I have talked about you.
He has.
Tony is probably sick and tired of hearing me talk about you.
He's coming on the show. He's coming on the show. This is going to be a great guest for us. And and again, I appreciate greatly appreciate your time that day. And again, for being on today. We are listening, or you are listening, to the Ships Gonna Happen podcast. We have Jimmie Lenz on with us this morning, and he's filling us in a little bit about crypto and the transportation industry. And so, Jimmie, did you get any kind of, when you were speaking, or when you speak like at the Mid-America Truck Show or any of these shows, do you get any kind of pushback where people aren't necessarily wanting to adapt to what's new or what the new trends are?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny, It comes from obviously people that don't want to change. I mean, there are a lot of people, and I'll call them out. I was in finance for decades before I came back to academia to use my education for a different kind of purpose. But people who are in banking and very traditional industries like that, insurance, they don't want things to change. They have life is really good for them. And so people like me come in and say, hey, I want to disrupt factoring. I want to, basically give drivers back 100 cents on the dollar. And all these people are like, whoa, wait a minute. We don't want that kind of change. We're doing really well with this factoring thing. We like this. So a lot of very traditional industries do not like innovation. I mean, let's face it, a lot of regulation is only there to protect the entrenched players. That's all it's there for. Right. It's not to protect consumers. It's not to help things out, and if you follow it, over the past probably month or two, the House Financial Services Committee has a new leader. Obviously, Congress turned over, right? And the new chairman of the House Financial Services Committee is from North Carolina. It's Patrick McHenry. And Congressman McHenry has been grilling the SEC and asking, hey, your job is capital formation. What are you doing to help formate new capital, bring new capital into business, into investing in things here in the U.S. And they haven't had very many good answers. And so, this idea of protecting the entrenched players, it is starting to be challenged now, which I think is a really good thing. We need to be incentivizing innovation, like I said before, and sometimes that means taking some risk. And if nothing else, Americans are risk takers, and sometimes those risks pay off, and sometimes they don't. Right. But if you never take them, you'll never know.
Exactly.
So, Jimmie, could this blockchain also be used for truck drivers wanting to buy new equipment also?
We're actually working, and I can't tell you, I wish I could tell you the name of the company, but it's a big company. We're working with a company to help basically to put into place a kind of debit card that truck drivers could use for purchases. So instead of having to convert the way TCS works, and it's a little complicated, we actually pay drivers in truck coin swap tokens, which they can immediately redeem for 100 cents on the dollar. Wow. For their invoices. But a lot of them say, it's kind of I would rather just, leave it in truck coin swap tokens if I could pay for things with it. And so right now we're talking to a large company about creating a debit card, basically, that you could use for fuel. Because let's face it, that's what the first thing people are thinking about. But you could use it for other purchases also. So absolutely.
the highest cost fuel. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and it was funny, when I was at the Mid-America Truck Show, everybody has a preconceived notion about everybody. People have preconceived notions about me as a professor. I do, about people who are truck drivers. You do about every profession, but you can't make generalizations, not anymore, about anybody. And as I was talking, because one of the things I hear all the time is like, well, some of the small companies are not going to be that sophisticated and using, cryptocurrency and things like that. I'll bet half of the people I talked to at Mid-America Truck Show had a crypto wallet.
Right.
They had already done some,
It's amazing.
Playing around with cryptocurrencies and things like that.
It's amazing.
So where do you see the timeline on this becoming more adapted into society? Is that something you're looking at?
We are. I think that it's happening slowly but surely, and it's happening in a different age group. So if you look at younger people, they're adapting it a lot quicker. They're looking at it, and that's kind of always the way, right? Is that you have younger people doing it, and we all know the average truck driver is not a young person these days.
Right.
Kind of like the average financial advisor. In fact, they're almost the same age.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it is a little bit slower with a lot of the people that are working, but with younger people, it's being adapted pretty quickly, and we see it. We're seeing that, but now that we are starting to settle invoices for some of these companies, people who are of an age, a little bit older age, are starting to see the benefits of it. So I think it is starting to be adapted. I think as more and more people see it for these really practical use cases, and to me, that's probably the most pertinent thing. When people start seeing it as a practical use case, this is what I can use in my life every day, and this will make my life easier and better, they'll start doing it. Just like smartphones, say, 10 years ago, people were like, do I really need all that stuff on your phone?
Yeah.
And now, you try to take your a smartphone away from my 96-year-old mother-in-law.
Yeah.
You try to take her smartphone away, she would be like livid.
World War III.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, slowly but surely, these things kind of work their way into your life, and sometimes you don't even realize it's happening.
Yeah.
But I definitely see it being more and more entrenched in kind of just everyday normal stuff that we do.
Wow. So do you do a bunch of speaking or about this around the country? Do you travel?
Do.
Okay. What do you have something coming up, or?
Yeah. When's your next one?
Well, I actually will. I'll be at the University of California, Berkeley, next Friday. I'll be giving the keynote at a fintech conference there and talking a little bit about digital assets. But we have and that's basically the kind of the catch-all phrase for all kinds of cryptos, digital assets. We had a really big conference at the end of January, beginning of February this year here in Durham. We had a couple of hundred people come in from all over the world for that.
Wow.
We had a small, as I mentioned, we had a summit up in DC a couple of weeks ago, and that was more on the innovation side of things and trying to influence some folks on Capitol Hill. Which, by the way, if you've ever tried to do that before, man, how hard is that? It's like herding cats.
Right.
Getting those folks all on the same page. I will be doing that one. So yeah, there will be one in the fall that I'll be doing in Abu Dhabi, of all places.
Wow.
I've been there actually.
Have you?
Oh yeah, I was in the military. My man had to do a stop there. Yeah, but go ahead. Sorry.
Different purpose. It's a stopover. Nice place.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice people too.
Nice people. Nice place. Everything's new.
Right.
Everything is new. And so we'll be doing. That's a big center of financial innovation right now.
Wow.
Abu Dhabi and Dubai are trying to become the next financial center. Of global financial center, and so they're putting a lot of investment into cutting edge technologies and things like that, and so trying to steal that mantle away from Hong Kong, and they're making inroads. They are making inroads. So they've asked us to come over and do one. So we're going to be doing a digital assets a couple of day kind of symposium, and educational seminar over there in the fall, late fall.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll be doing the conference again next January in here in Durham. So yeah, we have a lot, and I speak on things, gosh, probably once or twice a month. I'll be at something speaking, and I enjoy it. I do try to get out and again use my experience to influence things for the better. Small business and innovation. That's what I'm always looking for, because that's driven us for the last 100 years in the United States, and I want to see it continue for the next 100.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well said. Do you find it easier to the audience are more receptive overseas than they are in the United States?
I would say so. The audiences, I would say, are pretty receptive on both sides. The governments and regulators are definitely more receptive overseas.
Wow, I would imagine that. Good
Definitely
question,
more
David.
receptive overseas.
So your biggest hurdle when you go to Washington D.C., like you mentioned earlier, is getting the herded cats to pay attention to you and listen to what exactly you're putting forward. Correct?
Absolutely. And there are some people, like I say, the Patrick McHenry has been great. He's introduced so many bills. It's incredible for somebody who's only been sitting in the chair for 5 months now.
Right.
He's introduced a lot of new things, which is awesome, and that's great to see. But yeah, I mean, right now we're in, and this goes way beyond finance. I mean, you see the same thing in medicine, you see the same thing in transportation. We are in it seems like a regulatory environment that is very big on enforcement and very light on guidelines. And one of the things I was doing in DC was I was advocating for a federal sandbox, which would be a way for companies to go and innovate new products and be able to test them out in a limited way without regulators shutting them down immediately. Because I'll tell you, that's what's happening here in the U.S. And we're seeing more and more overseas governments and overseas Better Business Bureau type entities advocating, bring your company here, bring your company to the UK, bring your company to the EU, bring your company to Asia. We have, and it's not because the regulatory environment is that much lighter in those places. It's just they've laid down guidelines. So like right now around cryptocurrency, for instance, the EU has very much laid out guidelines. The UK has laid out guidelines. The Middle East has laid out guidelines. And some of the authorities in Asia have laid out guidelines. And the US, still nothing.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think the US, do you think it's to protect the dollar ultimately? Or what do you think? Why do you think that is?
I think it's a couple of things. It's not to protect the dollar, because honestly, what I think would be one of the best things for the dollar is if you had more cryptocurrencies that are denominated or that are priced in dollars.
Gotcha.
So if we have more stable coins, for instance, that were priced in dollars, that would be a great thing for us, instead of people pricing them in British pounds or in euros or something like that. It's like, this would be a good thing. I think that in Washington, and this isn't going to be a surprise to anybody, right now things are just so divisive. It seems like everything is an issue. Everything comes to what side of the aisle are you on? So that's part of it, is this bipartisan nature that is just going on in Washington. And I'm not going to say one side is right and the other side is wrong, because they both are right and they're both wrong. And they need to remember, what it was like 30 years ago when everything was done in a bipartisan way.
Right.
And it's just, you just don't have that right now. So I think that's a big part of it. I think, honestly, a lot of our legislators are really old people, and they have a difficult time, as I was saying before, thinking about new technology in the ways that they should. I think that regulators have been given a very, very long leash, and regulators are there to protect things. They are not there to make policy. They shouldn't be, the ones that are leading the way. When you have, I've never known a regulator that had a patent on anything. I don't know if you guys have.
That's hilarious.
You ever meet a regulator that had a patent on anything?
I'm going to use that line.
I know a lot of people. I have patents out there. I know a lot of people who have invented new things, and none of them are regulators.
Exactly.
And so, I don't think we want regulators leading the way.
Exactly.
And that seems like what's happening here in the States.
Okay. Man,
You've
that's
given me a
great
terrible
answer.
soapbox.
No, all good.
Love that. I had so when you look at the whole sector, the sectors of our economy as
Mm-hmm.
on a broad scale, where does, as far as the blockchain is concerned, where does trucking fit into that? Where would you say, is transportation trucking sector behind, in your experience of where they should be with that compared to other industries?
I don't think they're behind.
Okay.
Because I don't think the adoption has been as wide as it should be. It's funny, if you look at the companies that are using blockchain quite a bit, they aren't advertising the fact. So JP Morgan Chase, you've heard Jamie Dimon come out and derail blockchain and Bitcoin and things like that. Yet they have their own cryptocurrency. There's a JP Morgan Chase coin. Now they only use it for internal purposes, but they still have it. They have their own blockchains internally. They have their own company internally called Onyx that has several hundred people working there. So they're taking advantage of a lot of things on blockchain. You just don't know it. They're not advertising it. So there are those kinds of things taking place. I don't think trucking is behind, but trucking is a little bit different because it's so big.
Right.
There are over 1 million small companies that are integral to the trucking industry. And right now, because it is so big, a small adoption would be huge for the industry. Even a small percentage. And so that's what I'm trying to do. We're working hard to get it there. But trucking is so integral to the United States. And I think when I talk to people overseas about this, I don't think they see it the same way because, let's face it, if you live in Spain or you live in Germany or live in the UK, those are not giant countries. It's not like the United States where, long haul here is 3,000 miles plus, long haul in the UK it's a smaller place. And so sometimes the scope of things I think is difficult for other people to grasp. And so it's that much more important. It's not that, it's not important there. But United States and Canada, we're giant countries, just the land masses are huge. And everything moves by truck. And, the supply chain, all you have to do is think back on the pandemic. It's only been a short period of time.
Right.
The supply chain disruptions, all of a sudden, what happens? Your shelves are bare.
Exactly.
At stores. And we can't afford that. And we shouldn't, right? Because that's what keeps the economy going. That's what keeps things chugging along. That's what keeps people employed. And so we want to keep those shelves full. We want to keep, manufacturing able to, have the raw materials that they need. We want to keep that going. When you look at certain industries in the United States, home building, and there's a couple of different ways that people account for it. But if you think about that in terms of GDP, that's about 12 to 18% of our GDP is home building in the United States. What do you have to build a home? You have to have a lot of materials, and they're only getting there one way, right? It's on the back of a truck. And so, those major types of industries are all very, very dependent on trucking. So I think, adapting trucking makes perfect sense to blockchain technology because it will permeate the whole economy quickly.
Man,
Jimmie, what do you say to people that think that this is no more than a scheme, like blockchain?
The crypto?
The crypto is no more than a Ponzi scheme. What do you say to those people to try to get them to fully understand that it's not?
Yeah, I say, come on over. Let me show you how it works.
There you go. Boom, easy enough.
Application. There's a reason I work in an engineering school.
Yeah, boom.
Engineers build things.
Exactly.
Not a lot of theory when you're building a building, right?
Well,
it is the ultimate in applied.
Well said. Well said. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning, Jimmie. Can you do us a big favor? Can you give us this is Jimmie Lenz and you're listening to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast. Can you do something like that for us real quick?
Of course. This is Jimmie Lenz. I'm happy to have been asked to do this, and you are listening to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast.
Well done. And we have our own little Ship's Gonna Happen Hall of Fame, HUL of Fame, and today we are inducting Dr. Jimmie Lenz into our very first doctor into our Ship's Gonna Happen Hall of Fame. It's just some little title. There's no actual whatever. We'll send you a T-shirt, Jimmy. Yeah. We'll do that.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time. And
can you
send me? Make sure you send me a link to the podcast, it will get out there on a lot of social media channels.
Thank you very much. We definitely will do that. Jimmy, do you have your own podcast that you can push?
I do. I have a podcast that's been going on for a couple of years now. It's Coffee and Crypto with Jimmy and Lee.
Okay.
We do that every other week, and we are talking coffee and crypto.
Where else can people catch you?
Yeah.
You can catch me on Spotify. You can catch me on Apple. That's where most people are picking up their podcasts these days. But we are definitely out there. Or you can just Google Coffee and Crypto with Jimmy and Lee, and you'll see a lot of hits there. We've been doing this for a couple of years now.
If you don't mind, and you don't have to do this, could you give us a plug on one of those? One of your next shows, if you don't mind.
Next episode, you guys are definitely going to be on there.
That is so cool. So, am I going to see you in Louisville again next spring, or do you know yet?
Oh, you can count on it.
Awesome.
I'm hoping that we're going to go. We'll probably go one further. We'll probably be an exhibitor next year. This year we did the educational seminar, and we were definitely around and talking to a lot of folks. I think this next year we will probably be an exhibitor there.
Yeah, awesome. We'll definitely hook up at the Mid-America Truck Show if we don't see you before then. And if hopefully you're a beer drinker, because we're going to take you out and get you some beers too.
I am definitely a beer drinker, and I will take you up on that.
Awesome.
A pleasure.
Dr. Lenz, we greatly appreciate you being on here this morning. Give your best to your wife, if you would, please. And thank you for being on the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast.
It was a pleasure,
Thanks
sir.
Very much for having me.
You take care.
You too, the same. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
I'll send them. You're listening to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast. Boom! Jimmie Lenz was on today. Awesome guest.
Edutainment.
We need to have him back. I guess we should have asked him if we could bring him back. And I'm sure
he won't have a problem.
Yeah, absolutely not. That was an outstanding interview. You can catch Dr. Lenz and his information on crypto. He has his own podcast called Coffee and Crypto. So check that out on the platforms. I'm sure if you Google search that, you can come up with that. I have been overly intrigued by this gentleman since I met him in Louisville, and I'm glad that I did. And I have been following him. And those of you that know me know that I have just talked about this guy nonstop since then. So we greatly appreciate him being on today. So in the trucking world, Tony, I didn't do any homework this week. Rates are definitely coming down. I will say that.
Yeah, I think it's getting, I think the trailers are running a little light these days, right? Yeah. So it's definitely shifted to a buyer's market, right?
Mm-hmm. It has. Rates are coming down. Things are looking better.
Fuel's holding a little bit, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning as I drove down here and noticed that I hope we're not getting into a comfortability factor where we think that fuel is just, it's okay that it's at the price it is now, because it's still overly priced. Yeah. I mean, I don't understand why it just doesn't keep coming down. I hear, or I listen every now and again, and I hear that it's at like $77 a barrel or something like that. But why isn't it continue to just keep coming down? But I don't know.
Well, you've had policies, right?
Yeah.
Changing that, right? So there's one right now getting ready to get put into the vote, which is to eliminate drilling in areas. So
oh, really?
That goes through. I mean, might see a spike in the price. So, but the transportation world, I think, is just moving along as usual, and it's like you said, you're seeing prices go down. So there's a lot of activity with that, and yeah.
Let's see here. I'm looking through some headlines. Sorry, you are listening to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast. Yep. I'm just kind of going through here some
to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast.
Ooh.
Here we go.
This is Hall of Fame member Walmart Rich, and you're listening to the Ship's Gonna Happen podcast.
Boom!
Oh, that's awesome. He's such a good guy. We need to have him back.
Yeah, great guy.
Soon.
Yeah. Looks like the Colts quarterback.
Yeah.
Is going to be really, really good.
Anthony Richardson.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Number 5.
Yeah. It's going to be good.
I didn't know that he had changed his number to 5. I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't know he did either. Maybe there was some retired jerseys or something that was a problem. Who knows?
Yeah, something probably. Kind of just reading through some headlines here. Nothing's. Operation Safe Driver is the week of July the 9th through the 15th. So I'm sure.
Be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the thing too, in transportation world, you gotta, you got kids out of school this year, right? And they're out of school now. So when you're driving through maybe residential areas, be careful. The kids are going to be out if they're not playing video games, right? Our generation was out on the street
every day.
Yeah.
There
was Atari and most people didn't have one.
Yeah, no, yeah, and then it didn't work half the time.
Right, yeah.
Remember, you had to take the cartridge out and blow on it.
The tape lenses or whatever.
Yeah. And everybody was outside from sun up to sundown.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't get enough of it, man.
We're not just two old men exaggerating what happened. That's exactly what it was.
My mom said check in every 2 hours.
Oh, did she?
Right? I had to check in every 2 hours and never did. And she put sometimes a search party out for me.
Right.
And would find me with the other kids playing. But yeah.
I'll never, my dad worked 5A to 5P every day and he was home at 5:20 almost. And so that way, when you walked in the door right behind my dad, all right, that's probably about when it was supper time and the smell of whatever was cooking for supper, boom, you're like, oh man, that smells good. And just, sitting down and having a family meal, which doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Those were some, I kind of like the simpler times.
Man, do you feel like your IQ might have increased a little bit during this interview? I felt like I was, this guy's a genius.
Yeah, I had to watch a few of those things more than once just to even gain a small. I'm not trying to
stuff.
I'm like, what? But it's very intriguing, and I'm glad that I'm glad I met him. And
it makes you feel better about the blockchain, right?
Oh, sure does.
I mean, it's like
it gives you a whole new perspective on things, and I think some people that are
Duke
listening,
University, right?
Yeah, and like Jimmie said, he goes, "I'm an engineer for a reason,"
right? Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
People don't, it's criticized so much that it devalues it in one extent, but until you talk to people like this, you get back on track with it.
And I think it's criticized because people just don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. I don't know anything about that stuff, but I'm willing to at least listen and learn. And
here's an example. FTX goes down, right?
Yes, sir.
In the crypto world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you just had two of the largest banks in the history of our country go down.
And I wanted to bring that up, but I've heard, and I don't know these to be factual, and if we don't have Jimmie on, maybe we shouldn't be. I shouldn't be asking it or talking about it. But I heard that those two banks went down because of crypto. I don't know that to be true.
Oh yeah. Right,
I don't know that to be true.
Right. Well, I think one of them was invested heavily in it, but I think it was into the FTX stuff, right? So I don't think it was. That's what I was going to ask him, and maybe we'll have him back on again because one of the questions I had, and it was good that we probably cut it when we didn't let him off, but his time's valuable. But was how to ensure you're investing in a good crypto, and the way I do it, because I do crypto.
Yes, sir.
Is you look at what I do is I look at the worth of the company. If they had to cash out, how much of that money could they actually produce, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's only 4 or 5 that actually could liquidate close to what they're worth. And there's not very many companies in America that could do that, or banks. So some of those, Bitcoin could, if it was liquidated, would be billions. It would be worth its weight, I think. But that's something that a man with bigger brain cells than I have could answer better. So
legitimate, and I mean, I'm dumbing myself here, but like my brain feels like it's going to ooze out my ears when I listen to, or I'm trying to gain a perspective on it, and I'm open to it. But what do you see as to make crypto be more than what it is right now?
Well, I think it's people like him that show the value and the worth in it. And I think his doing these lectures and going around the country only enhances that. And so, because I mean, if you're smart, you can, just like any investment, if you do your research, you can figure out where you can put your money and make it grow. But I think people like him help it for sure. And I think in our country, like he said, which I kind of would have thought that but he gets more cooperation with governments in foreign countries than he does ours, which once that competitive world lights up, I think then America, and I think that's why he's lobbying, telling them, that, hey, we need to get the entrepreneurship going here on this side of the sector, and hopefully that happens. And you have both sides of the party have people in that believe in the blockchain. I mean, I didn't go into it with him, but you knew I was in the military and I worked in crypto, but it was a different type of crypto blockchain. It was because I had a security clearance, but you had tapes and cards that you used, which now would just be computer code in a program, because everything wasn't electronic. Computer, when I was in, it was more of a machine interpreting something and producing something that another machine interpreted and scrambled and produced. Now that blockchain, that was a simple blockchain of just cards and a couple they weren't really computers, but devices that read the crypto.
Can it replace the dollar?
Oh, well, I mean, he said he said he didn't think it would. It's not a threat to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think what he said, and that's what we get wrong, is that's a great question. I think that's where we get it wrong. He said that the dollar just backed the crypto bot with the dollar, and that's what I've always wondered. If you just did that, then 1,000 crypto coins is $1,000. But it's weird because Bitcoin is higher than the dollar, right? So one Bitcoin is way more than $1. So, and then if you were to cash that out, you're going to get, I don't know what Bitcoin's selling for exactly today, but it's more than $1.
Right. So,
and a lot of them do Ethereum. Cardano's at 37 cents. You got some that obviously don't, but that's interesting, man. It's the future. And like he said, I don't think it's going away, and it's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow. You and I'll be kicked back on a chair on a beach someday, retired, with our crypto coins.
Yeah, I hope we have something to retire with.
I know.
That's really that's not too far down the road.
Maybe they'll turn Social Security into crypto, right?
I don't know.
I don't know either,
I'm
but
not sure.
We should probably end this show before we destroy it.
Jimmy, if you're still listening, we apologize for butchering anything that we've been talking about, because for one, I'm just not in the know. So,
random thoughts.
I did have driving over, but I've the interview with Jimmy's kind of made me like, my brain's like,
mine too.
To check out, not necessarily checked out, but
it was a great show.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was awesome.
No, I don't think I do. No, it needs to rain.
So what about you? You going to look into crypto more?
No,
I'm going to think about it more?
I've definitely for sure, because I've been, again, since I've met Jimmy, I've been overly intrigued, and I've listened to a lot of his interviews that he's done in shows, but sometimes I have to listen to him more than once, because I just,
right.
Because when you put, like, if I listen at work and I get distracted or whatever, I lose thought about, so that's why the main reasons why I have to go back and listen is because, okay, I know I got to go back and re-listen to what's being talked about. I'm interested. I just want to know more about it. And if he comes around here and speaks, I would love to go listen. And
we should have asked him that, how close he would be. Well,
I'm sure he has something. Yeah, the Mid-American Truck Show.
Is there another one nearby us? Do they do one in Cincinnati?
So.
No,
I don't think so.
That's amazing. They don't do one in Cincinnati.
Well, you'd think they would do one in Indianapolis,
right
here. So.
Exactly. Indy too. Yeah.
Wow. But when you meet someone like that is as down to earth as Jimmy is and as approachable as he is, it becomes easier to be interested in whatever it is in that market, because I'm intrigued. I still just don't know enough about it.
It's a mind bender in a way, right? Because that's the thing I was going to ask him too, but we just don't want to waste all this time. But like, it's just amazing where we've come from, right? Like, you go back to the people that used to go into town square, and there were shifts that winded the town clock.
Yep.
Right. And then nobody winds a town clock anymore.
Mm-mm.
So we advance. So I think our generation, you think about your mom and dad, right?
Oh, yeah.
Think about transistor radio was a big thing for them. Black and white TV.
The only phone I need is the one on the wall.
Exactly.
I don't need a phone in my hand all the time.
Right. And he mentioned that, like the cell phone adoption. I remember, I told you that story before, being assigned one in the military and asking the Motorola guy, like, what the heck's this? And he's like, everybody's going to have one someday.
Yep. This is your alarm clock, your camera,
everything,
your whatever. Yeah. It's.
And everybody's getting rid of it. You still have a home phone line?
No, we haven't for years. We haven't had cable TV for a long time either.
Yeah.
I think we just now turned our box back in. One of them boxes they had to have.
Right.
And they still charge you for it.
Do they?
Oh, yeah.
Dang.
If you keep that box, they're going to keep charging you. Dang. So you literally have to turn that stupid box back in. And I think we just did like sometime last year.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It's dumbass. Just things that, advancements or new technologies aren't necessarily always bad or whatever.
No, it's always, it's just such a jump from where we've been, right?
Yeah. And I hate to keep gushing about Jimmie, but Jimmie's an approachable guy and somebody that it sounds like we're having a conversation just like you and I are having a conversation. So yeah, I appreciate that.
He's very elaborate too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I wish the people in Washington, D.C. would give him more, pay attention to him a little bit more. Or give
Gridlock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
boy, can you imagine like a guy with his high intellect going in meetings, the supposed high intellects that are representing us, and it's just, he just can't get to where he wants it to go. So, it's, hopefully that changes someday, but someday soon, man. Let's have some fun in America again. What the heck? So let's launch the entrepreneurship and make this thing better.
Yeah. And listening to his podcast or the show that he was on while I was driving over here, just did the other day. He says it's easier to patent something. They pay you to patent overseas, and here you have to pay to patent something here. And it could cost up to like $50,000 to do it.
Yep.
In other countries, they pay you to do that.
Right. That's amazing.
So, like he said, it's got to.
And it's not easy here getting one because we got one.
Mm-hmm.
It took a while.
It took a long time.
A year.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Patent the Ship's Gonna Happen.
All
name.
sorts of things. The logo. It's amazing. A lot of paperwork.
My brain hurts.
Yeah, it's wow. But yeah, Ship's Gonna Happen podcast episode 105.
Wow. Well, those of you listening, if you follow us on YouTube, smash that like button, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, good or bad, indifferent, whichever. We're always looking to improve the podcast, and we definitely greatly appreciate Dr. Lenz for coming on today.
That was a good one, David. Nice job, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent.
Awesome.
We out?
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Have a great weekend.
Have a good one.